Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today is November the 13th, 2021, and we're going to be discussing who confirms the covenant of Daniel's 70th week. Now, this is seems like one of those questions that most people would say, well, why does that matter? Who cares, right? No, it's pivotal. Without understanding this, it throws off your whole eschatology. So, back in, I think, 2002, right after 9/11, I was really seeking Yahuwah like never before. And I was asking him, what is going on? Why did all this happen? Or is this the end of the world? And it was during that time that I began to rethink my pre-tribulation rapture idea. And it was like, I was typing out some dreams that Yahuwah had given me. And as I was typing, I remember I was starting to talk about, the 7-year tribulation, right? I just started typing 7-year tribulation, and the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, just stopped me in my tracks and said, where does it say 7-year tribulation in the Bible? And I was like, I don't know. So I did a keyword search, and lo and behold, I couldn't find anything about a 7-year tribulation. Just wasn't in there. I mean, I did a keyword search on just 7 years, tribulation, 7-year tribulation, you name it, couldn't find it. So finally, it was like, as I began to understand, look up all the passages of Scripture that describe the tribulation, all I kept coming up with was 1,260 days, a times and a half times, and I realized, so the tribulation's only 3.5 years. So there is no such thing as a 7-year tribulation. The false Messiah will speak blasphemies for 42 months. So all I saw in Scripture for the tribulation is 42 months, 1,260 days, and times and a half times. And that's when I realized there is no such thing as a 7-year tribulation. And therefore, that brings us to the question, well, then, where are people getting this idea of a 7-year tribulation? Why was it, in my mind, I was thinking, where are they getting this idea? In the Christian church, they teach that there's a 7-year tribulation. Well, as I asked the question, the Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, says to me, it's from Daniel's 70th week. That's where they're getting this from. And I said, oh, okay. So as I began to really study Daniel's 70th week and dissect it into Hebrew, I realized that there was a little bit of a confusion as to who is the one who confirms the covenant. Theologians often say it's the Antichrist who confirms the covenant, but I'm going to show you why that is categorically false and why it doesn't fit the rest of the narrative. All right, so let's go here. This is a teaching I did. I started it in 2004, and then I've been in, it's been a work in progress. And then by 2013, I really completed it. Okay, so here it is. Who confirms the covenant of Daniel's 70th week? Now, here's a graphic I made just last year. I think it was about 1.5 years ago or so. This graphic just kind of gives you a brief overview. It says here, Messiah stood in the gap between the two houses of Israel and repaired the breach. He caused there to be a 2,000-year gap in history called the fullness of the Gentiles, Romans 11:25 and Genesis 48:19. Okay. And why do I reference that? Well, the apostle Shaul or Paul says in Romans 11:25 that Israel has been blinded in part until the fullness of the Gentiles is accomplished. And then in Genesis 48:19, Jacob, the patriarch, spoke over his grandson Ephraim, Joseph's son, and said, he shall become a multitude of nations. Well, what's interesting about that is that, in the English, it's translated multitude of nations. But in Hebrew, the phrase multitude of nations is translated Melo Hagoyim, which means fullness of the Gentiles. Okay? So Melo Hagoyim means fullness of the Gentiles. So you wouldn't automatically recognize Paul's reference in Romans 11:25 as fullness of the Gentiles coming from here, Genesis 48:19, unless you looked it up in the Hebrew. Then you would say, oh, that's where Paul's getting it from. Paul didn't just, Shaul didn't just make it up. He didn't just make up this phrase, the fullness of the Gentiles. It comes from here, okay? Melo Hagoyim, a multitude of nations. So, in other words, Yahuwah caused there to be a 2,000-year gap in history so that during this 2,000 period called the fullness of the Gentiles, Melo Hagoyim, Israel would be healed of their blindness. Okay, not all of Israel, but he does have a remnant. Okay, there's the modern state of Israel, which I know a lot of you out there think, oh, that's not the true Israel, and you want to think that just because the Zionists and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers were instrumental in bringing about the modern state of Israel, that's not the true Israel. That's silly. When our Messiah was here, who was in control? It was Rome, right? And even though Rome was controlling Jerusalem, did he say to them, oh, fake Jerusalem, you who stone all the prophets that are sent unto you? No, he didn't call them fake. He didn't say, oh, you're fake Jews. None of you here are real Israel. But he certainly did still rebuke them, did he not? Yes, he did. Jerusalem is the place where he's chosen to place his name. Okay, so yes, that is the legitimate nation of Israel. And prophecy did come to pass in 1948, contrary to what some of these false teachers have been poisoning the minds of Hebrew roots sheep with. They've been, there's a few wolves out there that are teaching that, the modern state of Israel is not the true Israel. Okay, of course we know that the Gentiles and the nations that are born again, that we too are grafted in. That's true. But make no mistake about it, Isaiah 66, 7 through 10 is the nation that was born in one day, and that was in 1948. So don't believe the lies. Yahuwah still has a plan for the modern state of Israel, despite what the Zionists are doing, despite what, he says in his word that he uses the wealth of the wicked, right? The wealth of the wicked has been laid up for the just. If he wants to use the Rockefeller money and the Rothschild money and the Zionist money to do his bidding, to prepare for the second coming of Mashiach so he could land his feet on the Mount of Olives, that's his business. He can use the wealth of the wicked to accomplish that if he wants to, right? It doesn't say in Zechariah chapter 12 that he's going to land his feet on the Mount of Olives if it's the illegitimate state of Israel. No, he says in Zechariah 12, he's going to pour out his ruach, his spirit of grace and of supplications, right, on the kingdom of Yehuda, the kingdom of Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem in the last days. He doesn't say he's going to pour out his spirit on Palestine, okay? It says he's going to pour out his spirit upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And it says, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. So make no mistake about it. Yahuwah has a remnant of people living there in the land. And you better watch what you say when you say, oh, they're not the real Jews. Oh, they're the synagogue of Satan. You don't know who's who. You don't know. So watch your mouth, because he actually says, that he will bring judgment on all those nations who come against Jerusalem. Okay, so watch your mouth. Be careful what you say. And this is a warning from Yahuwah. Be careful what you say. I'm going to just take a real quick look at Zechariah chapter 12 so you see that this is a serious thing to accuse the whole nation, the modern state of Israel, of being nothing more than the synagogue of Satan. If you do that, you are not going to make it. You're not going to make it. Yahuwah is not going to take it lightly, okay, where he has chosen to place his name in that place. He has chosen to place his name. Where's Zechariah? I'm looking for, there it is. Okay, Zechariah 12. Okay, so right here in verse 10, he says, and I will pour upon the house of David, the city of David. Where is that? Yerushalayim. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Yerushalayim. He doesn't say the fake Israel. He doesn't say Palestine. I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Yerushalayim the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. I just choke up when I read this. I don't know why. I'm more excited about this day than the day that we get taken up to heaven to meet him in the air. I'm more excited about this because I can't wait for him to finally meet the ones that pierced him and see them mourning for him. It's going to be a wonderful day. In that day, there shall be a great mourning in Yerushalayim as the mourning of Hadadrimon in the valley of Megiddo. Okay. Now, I want to show you this in the previous verse. He says that, he says that in that day, I will make the governors of Yehuda like a hearth of fire among the wood and like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. And Yerushalayim shall be inhabited again in her own place. Now, I believe that President Donald Trump is working for the Zionists. He's not a good guy. I believe he is an anti-Mashiach. I don't believe he's a good guy, but Yahuwah still used him to cause Jerusalem to be recognized again as the capital city of the modern state of Israel. Why? So that this prophecy could happen right here. Yerushalayim shall be inhabited again in her own place. Now, don't you tell me, oh, that's not the real Jerusalem. Oh, that's the fake Jerusalem. Look, I'm just showing it to you right here. Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place. Yahuwah also shall save the tents of Yehuda first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Yerushalayim do not magnify themselves against Yehuda. Okay, and then it says, and in that day shall Yahuwah defend the inhabitants of Yerushalayim. It doesn't say, I will defend the synagogue of Satan, does it? He's not calling them the synagogue of Satan, because he's going to separate the Zionist, the atheistic, satanic Zionists from those inhabitants of Yerushalayim that love him, love his Torah, and seek him. He's going to separate. And it says, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as Dawid, and the house of Dawid shall be as Elohim, as the Malach of Yahuwah before them. Now, this is a verse I really want you to pay attention to. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all nations that come against Yerushalayim. Now, be careful you don't come against his city, his beloved city, with your tongue, with your mouth. Be careful what you say when you say, oh, they're the synagogue of Satan. They're not the true Israel. Watch out. He says he will destroy those nations that come against Yerushalayim. Okay? Be careful. Watch your mouth. Okay? All right. So in this graphic, as you can see, I have a little picture of Abraham, and it says Abraham's animal pieces divided in half. Genesis 15:17. Right here, Jacob's house divided over Joseph's coat. Genesis 37:3. Right here, Solomon almost divides a baby with a sword. 1 Kings 3:24. Both houses of Israel divided. 1 Kings chapter 12. And then right here, Messiah's garment divided. Roman soldiers cast lots for his garment. Matthew 15:24. So there's a pattern here. Things are being divided so that in the future they can be made one stick again, right? And then as you can see, the priest is lighting a 7-branch menorah. And it says right here, Messiah died on 2 crossed trees. In other words, the 2 sticks. The cross is not a pagan symbol, or at least, the way that it's supposed to be used. Of course, the heathens use it as a pagan symbol, but the cross was originally the last Hebrew letter of the alphabet, the Tav, or the Ta. And it represents the 2 cross sticks of Ezekiel. He died on 2 cross trees, 2 cross sticks between 2 divided houses. In other words, the 2 thieves that he died between, they represent the 2 divided houses. He repaired the breach. Yahushua died in the middle, of these 2 thieves, to repair the breach, and he stood in the gap. That's why he died in the middle of Daniel's 70th week. He died in the middle of Daniel's 70th week to repair the breach, and he stood in the gap. Okay? Daniel's 70th week divided in half at Pentecost. So if you go to the middle branch here, if you look at each one of these branches as 7 feasts, you have Passover, Pesach. You have unleavened bread. You have first fruits, Shavuot, Pentecost, and then Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, and Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. So the middle branch represents Sukkot. Shavuot, Pentecost. So the first 3.5 years of Daniel's 70th week was fulfilled with Messiah, okay? And then he pours out his spirit when? On Pentecost, Shavuot. And then the 2 witnesses, 2,000 years later, the 2 witnesses begin their ministry. When? I believe they're going to begin their ministry at Pentecost, okay? I believe that the abomination of desolation is going to show up in the temple, And the moment we see that, when you shall see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, for then shall be great tribulation. This is what our Messiah said. Okay, we're not in the great tribulation right now. People are saying that, but it's not true. We have to see it. It has to be something we have to be able to see with our eyes. We haven't seen it yet. It's going to be televised. It's going to be televised. Okay. So the moment we see the abomination of desolation, then the two witnesses, I believe, will probably begin their ministry either at Pentecost, or they could end up beginning it here somewhere during the spring feasts. But I think it's going to be at Pentecost. And then the fall feasts, they're going to preach for 1,260 days. So 3.5 years were assigned to Messiah, and the other 3.5 years were assigned to the two witnesses. And the two witnesses are two corporate bodies of people, not two individuals. It's the two olive trees and the two menorahs, or the two candlesticks. Okay, so for many years, I guess since the early 1980s, I had often wondered about some of the patterns I was observing in Daniel's 70-week prophecy. My journey had been a continual work in progress until finally, after the events of 9/11/2001, I began to get a glimpse into what has eluded many theologians for centuries. That age-old enigma about who the He is in Daniel 9:27 is what this study is about. It would take me nearly 2 decades to uncover some of the pieces to this puzzle, but once the trickle began in 2002, the wellspring began to burst open. As of October 2013, I am sharing with you, the reader, the culmination of 32 years of trying to solve a mystery that has only been unlocked for me partially since 2002, but I believe it is now in plain view. In this study, I aim to show that our Mashiach, Yahushua, is the one who confirms the covenant in Daniel 9:27, and it's not the anti-Messiah. There are many theologians who build their pre-tribulation rapture theory based on the idea that there are 7 years of tribulation in the last days leading up to the second coming of Messiah. However, there is no place in Scripture telling us there will be a 7-year tribulation. Why is it so important to know who confirms the covenant? And which covenant are we expected to believe that he is confirming? Okay. Well, I'll give you a hint. In August 13th, 2020, President Donald Trump, who is an imposter, formed what's called the Abraham Accords, right? In other words, stepping in to make himself look like the Messiah who's confirming a covenant. Okay, the Abraham Accords. Okay, keep that in the back of your memory bank. The reason why the person confirming the covenant is of the utmost importance is because this seemingly minor detail has the potential to mess up your way of viewing end-time prophecy, even to the point of accepting an imposter. Okay. Now, I'm going to just let you know ahead of time. I'm going to be doing this teaching until 1:30, so 1 hour from now, and then we're going to open up for questions, Q&A. And then if we have to finish this teaching, which I'm pretty sure we will, there will be a part 2 next week. Back in the summer of 2004, I spent much time in prayer asking the Heavenly Father to explain this verse to me. I also translated each word in Daniel 9:24 through 27 into Hebrew in order to better understand the meaning of these verses. All of Torah and prophets was written for the sole purpose of bringing us to Messiah. Therefore, all prophecy written in the Tanakh, or what some people would call the Old Testament, revolve around him. And I've heard people say, oh, Daniel's 70th week has already all been fulfilled. There's a lot of people that believe that. The Seventh-day Adventists believe that. That's a preterist view. Preterism teaches that prophecy is all in the past and there's no future fulfillment. Well, let me tell you why that's incorrect, because Yahuwah is the one who is and who was and who is to come. He has an eternal existence, and he exists in all time continuums. So if he is the one who was and who is to come, what makes you think that prophecy stands still? It doesn't. Prophecy cannot stand still. Prophecy is ongoing. It has multiple fulfillments in history. There is, usually he gives us partial fulfillments in the past so that we can observe patterns. And that when the real fulfillment comes along, we can look back on those patterns. Okay? And so all of Torah and prophecy was written for the sole purpose of bringing us to Messiah. In Luke 24:44, Yahushua said, all things written about me in the Torah and in the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. So that means that there's a thread that kind of goes all throughout the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, about him. The apostle Shaul, Paul, wrote that Messiah is the end of the Torah, and that word end is not what you think it means. It doesn't mean the termination of the Torah. It means the end goal. He is the ultimate goal of the Torah. That's why the law and the prophets cannot be finished or done away with until heaven and earth passes away. In other words, till the end of the millennium. Okay? So every jot and tittle, 100% of every punctuation mark of the Torah and prophets will be in effect all through the millennium until heaven and earth passes away. Okay, so the hidden meaning behind 70 times 7. The number 7 has been a holy number since the creation, when Elohim set aside the seventh day of the week and rested. Okay, we have the scriptural references here. Genesis 2:2-3, Hebrews 4:4. The number 7 continues to show us patterns that point to covenant. The 7 annual Sabbaths, as well as the seventh day Sabbath, is a sign of our everlasting covenant with Yahuwah. There are 7 annual feasts that we are commanded to observe as a sign of our covenant with him. Leviticus 23. There are 7 branches on the menorah in the temple, representing 7 assemblies in the book of Revelation. Jacob worked 2 periods of 7 years for his 2 wives. His son Joseph worked in Egypt under Pharaoh during 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Our Messiah resurrected on the evening of the 7th day of the week, which is why he called himself the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay? Yahushua also gave us a hidden message using 7 sevens about the events that must take place leading up to his second coming. When his disciples, his Talmudim, asked, how many times must I forgive my brother? He answered them with the following mathematical equation. He said, 70 times 7. Matityahu 18:22. Yahushua said unto him, I say not unto you until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. You see, the length of the prophecy of Daniel 9:24-27 is the result of 70 times 7. Okay, 70 Shemitas, 70 sabbatical years, 490 years. This means that the completion of forgiveness of sins for Israel can only be found in Messiah Yahushua. Okay, now I'm going to just share you some patterns with you. 70 disciples for 70 nations. Our Messiah appointed 70 disciples, not just the 12. Luke 10:1-7. There are 70 descendants who came out of Jacob's loins, Exodus 1:5. In Exodus 24:1 and in Numbers 11:25, it states that there were 70 elders of Israel. There are 70 bullocks offered on the Feast of Tabernacles for the nations, 70 base nations. I mean, there's a whole lot more nations than that, but All the nations of the earth stem from these 70 base nations. Okay. That's why there were 70 bullocks offered on the Feast of Tabernacles for the nations. These were from the descendants of Noah. In the temple, there are 70 shekels presented for the redemption, for the bride price, and for the 70 nations. Okay. In Exodus 38:29, there are 70 talents of brass representing sin, the sins of the nations, and they are offered before Yahuwah by the priests. The number 10 points to the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Okay. Thus, we can see that the number 70 is the product of 7 times 10. 7 meaning covenant, 10 representing the nations. So 7 times 10 is 70. 70 points to the fact that Yahuwah has offered his covenant to the nations. Okay? That's what the number 70 represents. This means that Yahuwah intends to bring all the Gentile nations to himself through the covenant he made with Israel. Therefore, 70 times 7 is a formula revealing to us that forgiveness was purchased for all of humanity. Okay, the one who made the oath always confirms it with sevens. Okay, Daniel's 70-week prophecy begins in Daniel 9:24. Here's what it says. It says 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. So the first thing to take note of is the word weeks in the above passage. The word weeks is defined in the Hebrew Strong's Concordance as follows. It's Shabua. It's number 7620 in the Concordance. It's Shabua, and it means sevened, means sevened. It can mean a week, like a literal week of 7 days, but it says specifically of years. So it's a Shabua. It's a sabbatical, sabbatical year. A sabbatical year is 7 years. It's called a Shemitah. You'll notice that this word Shabua can mean anything divisible or multiplied by 7 as indicated by the definition sevened. It can apply to a literal 7-day week, but more specifically, it is most often used to apply to weeks of years, or in other words, 77s, okay, of years. This means 490 years for the length of the prophecy. A couple of other root words for Shabua gives us an even deeper meaning behind this word. So Shabua means something sworn. It means an oath, okay? It can also mean a curse, right? Another word is Shabbat. It means to complete. That's another root word. It means to seven oneself. It means to swear as if by repeating a declaration 7 times. By an oath, with an oath. Okay? So in other words, the word Shabua has to do with taking an oath. Okay? The number 7 signifies taking an oath. The interesting thing is that the number 7 is characterized by taking an oath or swearing to something. So where is the first mention of our Creator making an oath? Okay, right here. Bereshit, Genesis 26:3. Bereshit. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you, for unto you and unto your seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swore unto Abraham your father. And then in next verse, Bereshit 26:4, and I will make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto your seed all these countries, and in your seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed. So this is a promise that he gave to Abraham. He made an oath, and that's important. You'll understand why the word oath is so important as we progress. The above verse is about Yahuwah appearing to Isaac, Yitzhak, and reiterating the promise that he had already given to his father Abraham. The oath in Genesis 26:3 is number 7621, Shabua, meaning something sworn. It means an oath. Previously, in Genesis 12:2-3, Yahuwah commanded Abraham to leave his country and sojourn to a land that would become his inheritance. It was at this time that he promised Abraham that he would bless him and make him a great nation. This is an artist depiction, messianic artist named Larissa Lando. I love her artwork. It was on a calendar that I bought in 2005, so I scanned the image and saved it. But as you can see, this is Abraham meeting with Melchizedek, which I believe was a pre-incarnate appearance of our Messiah. Okay, Melchizedek. And there's Abraham meeting with Melchizedek, and he's blessing him with bread and wine, and Abraham gives him a tenth of all the spoils of war, which included silver and gold. Okay. Now, two chapters later in Genesis 14:18-19, Melchizedek, the one who was sworn by an oath, came to Abraham and blessed him with bread and wine. You see, this Melchizedek was illustrating that he was confirming the covenant with Abraham through this act of blessing him with bread and wine. As a continuation of this oath, Yahuwah promised to send his Messiah, the high priest Melchizedek, to confirm the same covenant with the people of Israel, those who are the seed of Abraham. Tehillim, Psalms 110, verse 4, says, Yahuwah has sworn, there's that word again, Shabbat, has sworn and will not repent. You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. So the word sworn in this verse is number 7650, Shabbat. It means to be complete, to seven oneself, to swear, as if by repeating a declaration 7 times with an oath. Okay? Now we are beginning to understand more fully why Yahuwah has sworn with an oath to send us his Messiah after the order of Melchizedek. We can begin to understand why our Messiah taught his disciples to forgive our brother 70 times 7. It is because he has already sworn with an oath to cleanse his inheritance, his bride, from all sin and all unrighteousness. Therefore, we are also to follow in his footsteps by forgiving one another in the same manner, with an oath. In other words, 70 times 7. He will make his forgiveness for us complete. Hebrews 6:16. For men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife. Okay? And Hebrews 6:17 says, wherein Elohim, willing more abundantly to show unto the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath. By an oath. Okay? So the promise he gave to Abraham was by an oath. The promise he gave to David about Melchizedek is by an oath. Okay? Do you catch this? He confirmed the covenant by an oath with what? Sevens. Why is this important? You're going to understand why in a minute. In Ibrim, Hebrews 7:20, it says, and inasmuch as not without an oath he was made priest. And Ibrim, Hebrews 7:21, it says, for those priests, he's referring to the high priests that were according to the sons of Aharon. He says, for those priests were made without an oath. But this, meaning Melchizedek, with an oath, by him that said unto him, Yahuwah swear and will not repent, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Ibrim, Hebrews 7:28 says, for the Torah makes men high priests. This is important. If you understand just this one sentence right here, for the Torah makes men high priests, which have infirmity. That word infirmity means weakness. Okay. In other words, they're mortal. Okay. So the Torah makes men high priests, which have infirmity. But the word of the oath, which was since the Torah, makes the Son who is consecrated forevermore. Okay. So in other words, the Torah made mortal men into high priests. But before that, the word of the oath in eternity, Yahuwah has already made Melchizedek a priest that abides forever. Okay? All right, now an important question arises. If the number 7 is characterized by taking an oath or confirming a covenant, then why would our Creator assign the 70th week, the last 7 years of this 490-year prophecy, to the Antichrist or the false Messiah? Okay? Are you picking up on that? If the 70 times 7 is a sign that only he can complete the oath, why would the last 7 years be assigned to the anti-Mashiach? Do you see how dangerous it is to believe that it's the anti-Messiah who confirms the covenant? Because what the devil wants people to believe is that the last 7 years of Daniel's 70th week has been given over to the anti-Mashiach, and he's the one that's going to confirm the covenant. No way. No way. Does it not make sense that the 70th week, in other words, the last 7 years, would be reserved for the one who could actually complete the oath? Doesn't it? You see, the first half of Daniel's 70th week prophecy culminated with the Messiah lifting up the cup of salvation the night before he died. Psalm 113:16. On the night before he died, he lifted up the cup of salvation and confirmed the covenant by the lifting up of that cup. By this action, he was illustrating that he was confirming the same covenant that he had initially made with Abraham. Okay, after the slaughter of the kings, now pay attention because you're going to see something that you might have never noticed before. After the slaughter of the kings, Melchizedek blessed Abraham with bread and wine. Genesis 14:18 through 19. As a sign that he was confirming this covenant, he blessed Abraham with bread and wine. Okay, he could not have given us a bigger hint that he was the same Melchizedek who confirmed the Abrahamic covenant. Then when he blessed his disciples with what? Bread and wine. Again, only this time it wasn't going to be after the slaughter of the kings. It would be before the slaughter of the King of Kings. Are you getting that? You see how he did it in reverse? When he blessed Abraham, it was after Abraham slaughtered the kings. But this time, when he confirms the Abrahamic covenant with the nation of Israel, he does it before the slaughter of the King of Kings. Why does he do it in reverse order? Well, because there is a reversal of the curse that was taking place. You see, he's reversing the curse. With the original covenant, Abraham recovered all that the enemy had stolen from he and his family, and afterwards he gave 10% of the gifts to Melchizedek of the spoils of war. Well, what does the number 10 have to do with the 10 lost tribes, right? Abraham gave him 10% of the spoils of war because 10 is representing the 10 northern tribes of Israel that were scattered to the nations. When Messiah came to restore Israel back to the covenant, what does it say? It says he went into the lower parts of the earth and gave gifts unto men. Ephesians 4:8 through 9. So he is now giving gifts to us. You see, in Genesis, Abraham gave gifts to Melchizedek, but now Melchizedek is giving gifts back to us. See that? In other words, he took back the keys from Sheol, hell, and the grave. Revelation 1:18. In doing so, he recovered all that the enemy had stolen from he and his family. When he blessed Abraham with bread and wine, it was after the slaughter. However, when he blessed Israel with bread and wine, it was before his own slaughter. These two events act like bookends to a confirmation of a covenant. Okay? Now, in Mark 14:24, and he said unto them, this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for what? Many. Okay? Pay close attention to this word, many. Okay? Daniel 9:27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. As we can see from this above verse, it was our Messiah, Yahushua, who came to confirm the one and only covenant with Yahuwah made with Abraham. Messiah also confirmed this covenant during when? Passover week with who? Many. He says many. As he said the night before his crucifixion, this is the blood of my covenant shed for many. Mark 14:24. Now right here it says he shall confirm the covenant with many. Why is that important? The word many, if you look it up, it means the multitude. Now, who's the multitude? Didn't Jacob, pray and bless his grandson Ephraim and say, you shall become a multitude of nations? The many? Okay, so let's dissect Daniel 9:27 word for word. The first word I want to define from Daniel 9:27 is the Hebrew word for confirm, which means the following in the concordance. This word confirm is gabar. It's a primitive root. It means to be strong. It means to prevail, to act insolently, to confirm, to be mighty, to strengthen, to be valiant. Some theologians take the he in Daniel 9:27 to be about the anti-Mashiach, the Antichrist, who acts insolently against the Creator, because this word means to act insolently. But the dictionary defines this word insolent as rude, impolite, insulting, contemptuous, exhibiting boldness. However, this Hebrew word gabar is used in Zechariah 10:6-12 to describe how Yahuwah himself will prevail. And that word is in Hebrew is gabar. He will prevail. He will gabar in the last days against the enemies of Israel. You will notice that this word gabar is used in connection with the house of Judah and the house of Joseph and their future restoration. Zechariah 10:6 says, and I will strengthen, and that word is gabar, I will strengthen the house of Yehuda, and I will save the house of Yehusaph, and I will bring them again to place again. For I will have mercy, I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I had not cast them off. For I am Yahuwah, their Elohim, and will hear them. And then in verse 12, he says the same thing. He says, and I will strengthen gabar them in Yahuwah, and they shall walk up and down in his name, says Yahuwah. Okay. In Yeshayahu, Isaiah 42:13, Yahuwah shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, roar. He shall prevail. And there's that word again, gabar. He shall prevail against his enemies. Okay. And Debrei Hayamim, 1 Chronicles 5:2, it says, for Yehuda, Judah, prevailed. And that word again is gabar. Above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Yehusef's, Joseph's. In Bereshit 49:26, the blessings of your father have prevailed. That word again is gabar, have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Yehusef, Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. So you see, this word gabar can be used in a negative way, but in most cases, it's being used in connection with Yahuwah confirming a covenant with his people. So here's a graphic I made, and it shows the paleo-pictograph letters in this word gabar. As you can see, it's Gimel, Dalet, Rosh. Gimel means foot or burden bearer, to gather, carry away. Bait, why did I say Dalet? I meant to say Gimel, Beit, Rosh. Okay. Beit, the house of Israel. Rosh, the head of a man. First, beginning, chief ruler. So this word Gabar paints a picture of our Messiah, who is the Gimel. He's the one who bore the burdens. It says in Psalm 55:22, the government will be upon his shoulders. He's the burden bearer. And he's doing it for who? The Beit, the house of Israel. And he is the chief ruler, the Rosh. For the government shall be upon his shoulder. He is the government. So he is the burden bearer for the house. He is the chief, the ruler. The Hebrew word for shoulder is in Isaiah 9:6. I went up too far. Sorry. Where was I? This happens sometimes. Okay. In Isaiah 9:6, where it says the government shall be upon his shoulder, it's Shechem, which literally means the neck between the shoulders as the place of burdens. Okay. In Daniel 9:27, if Daniel 9:27 was describing the anti-Messiah, confirming or strengthening a covenant with Israel, wouldn't that necessitate that there would already be a covenant in place? How can one confirm something unless there was already a covenant to begin with? Okay, so who qualifies to confirm the covenant except for the one who made the original covenant? So who's the one that met with Abraham? Melchizedek. That was the pre-incarnate Messiah. He's the one that made the covenant with Abraham in the first place. So he's the only one that qualifies to confirm it. Not President Donald Trump with his Abraham Accords. Okay? First of all, there is no other place in Scripture that describes a false Messiah establishing a covenant with the people of Israel. Okay? Now, of course, you could say that the Abraham Accords was him establishing a covenant. But see, that wouldn't have been the original. All he can do is copycat, right? He's a copycat. The only covenant that the anti-Messiah would attempt to confirm would be the one that Yahuwah had already made with Abraham, but he would have to convince the Yehudim, the Jews, that he was the true and genuine Messiah, which he already has, of course. You know, President Donald Trump. In Jerusalem and Israel, there are many people calling him the Messiah. And that's for another teaching. I'm not going to, get sidetracked with that. The next word in Daniel 9:27 is the word covenant. The Hebrew Concordance defines this word as follows. Brit. Okay, that word covenant is brit in the sense of cutting, a compact made by passing between pieces of flesh. Okay, now we know that the first person who ever did that, who made a compact by passing between pieces of flesh, was Yahushua, who met with Abraham and walked between the pieces, okay, in the sense of cutting. So this isn't talking about a peace treaty. This isn't talking about some political deal. This is an actual compact made between by passing between pieces of flesh. Okay. When was the first time that a covenant was made that involved passing between pieces of flesh? Well, you see, there's an established rule of interpreting Scripture. It's called the law of first mention. In this method of interpretation, the first time that a concept is presented in Scripture, it then becomes the precedent for when the same concept is presented again in other passages of the Bible. Hence, we know that whenever the Hebrew word brit is used elsewhere in Scripture, it usually has the same meaning as it did with the Abrahamic covenant. Okay? Bereshit, Genesis 15:9 says, "And he said unto him, Take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove and a pigeon." Bereshit 15:10, "And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst." In the midst, okay, in the middle. Okay, and that's important. In the midst is important. So you understand why Daniel's 70th week had to be cut in the middle. How Messiah was cut off in the middle of Daniel's 70th week. He took unto him all these and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. Now, what do these sacrifices represent? Okay, the 3-year-old red heifer is for the cleansing of the altar and for those who had touched a dead body. See Numbers 19. It is also for those who had shed innocent blood. Deuteronomy 21. So the day that our Messiah went to the cross and died for us, he became the red heifer. He was not only the Passover lamb, but he was also fulfilling the role of the red heifer. You see, the red heifer had to be escorted outside the city limits of Jerusalem, outside the camp. It is the only sacrifice that is done outside the camp. And why did he do it? Well, you see, first of all, they shouted, "Crucify him." The whole city, the whole nation shouted, "Crucify him." What did they do? They shed innocent blood. They were guilty. The whole nation was guilty of innocent blood, Deuteronomy 21. And because they were guilty of innocent blood, their Passover lamb sacrifice would have been considered invalid because their altar would have been defiled. But what did he do? He ensured that their altar wouldn't be defiled by becoming the red heifer. You see, he had to be the red heifer to make their Passover lamb sacrifice that year valid in the eyes of the Father. Also, the people that took his body down from the cross to bury him, they would have touched a dead body, rendering them unclean and unfit to participate in the Passover sacrifice. But what did he do? He covered all of that. He fulfilled the pattern of the red heifer. Okay? It also says that the ashes of the red heifer must be collected into a brand new container, a container that had never been used before. Well, Joseph of Arimathea donated his tomb for the body of our Messiah, and it says that it was a brand new tomb that had never before been used. You see the pattern there for the red heifer? Okay, the she-goat is the Yom Kippur atonement for Israel. See Leviticus 16. And as I've already explained, when he was baptized in the Jordan River, he was showing the whole nation that he was the Yom Kippur sacrificial goat. And right after he did his baptism, displaying himself as the Yom Kippur goat for the nation of Israel, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, immediately led him into the wilderness as the scapegoat for 40 days. Okay? That's for another teaching. I won't get too much into that right now. The ram is the substitute offering for Isaac, Yitzhak, the firstborn son of Abraham, Genesis 22:13. It is for this reason that the constellation of the ram is seen over Jerusalem during the month of Passover or Pesach. At the first Passover in Egypt, the lamb became the substitute for the firstborn sons of Israel. Okay, in Exodus 12, he tells us that we can sacrifice either a lamb or a goat. Okay, either a lamb or a goat for Pesach. The turtle dove and young pigeon is for a sin offering and for the firstborn. In other words, those who open the womb. See Leviticus 12:6 and also Luke 2:23 through 24. Okay, our Messiah had a ministry that lasted for 3.5 years. Now, I know there's other Torah teachers out there saying that his ministry only lasted 1 year or 70 weeks. I've got tons of evidence to disprove that, to debunk that. No, his ministry did not last for 70 weeks or 1 year. Okay, I think the person who teaches this, why he wants it to fit that our Messiah had a 1 year ministry, is because it says that the Passover lamb has to be a male lamb that is 1 year old. He's a 1 year old male lamb. So in order to make that prophecy fit, he removes passages of scripture from the book of John and tries to force this prophecy, right? Well, the thing is, the Passover before our Messiah died, Caiaphas prophesied that the whole nation must be redeemed by killing Yahushua. He said that that Yahushua would be killed so that the whole nation could be saved. He prophesied this out of his mouth. So this was the previous Passover. So there you have the 1 year old male lamb. Because according to the Torah, the high priest has to select the lamb that is going to be killed. The lambs were born usually in April. They were newborn lambs, and they would take those lambs and then they would prophesy. So he prophesied that was the lamb that was going to die for the nation. So when he prophesied that is where we get the idea of him being a 1 year old male lamb, because the high priest had to select the 1 year old lamb that was going to be killed for the nation. Okay. No need to remove scriptures out of the book of John. No need to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Okay. All these sacrifices in the Abrahamic covenant, were meant to point us to Yahushua, the Messiah. Our Messiah was doing something called standing in the gap when he died on the tree. Okay. So between two animal pieces, between two thieves, and between two evenings, there's you see he died between two thieves. The two thieves represent the two houses. Okay. He died between the two evenings. Scripture tells us in Exodus 12 that the lamb should be killed in the evening, according to the English translation. But when you look it up in the Hebrew, it's Bein ha'areb, meaning between the evenings. So you see, the night before he died, he did his Passover lamb sacrifice with his disciples, right? He said to them, go and prepare the Passover that we may eat it. And people try to say, oh, he didn't eat the Passover, because they think there's only one time during that 24-hour period that you're allowed to slaughter lambs. Well, no, in those days, first century Jerusalem, there was 2 nights for slaughtering lambs, because there were 2 houses of Israel. And besides all that, the Sadducees believed in slaughtering the lamb at the beginning of the 14th of Abib, and the Pharisees believed in slaughtering the lamb at the tail end of the 14th of Abib, just before evening, when it was about to turn into the 15th of Abib. So there was 2 nights for slaughtering lambs, and that's why Yahuwah preordained that it would be between the 2 evenings. You see, all these things were showing us that he was standing in the gap. He was, he died between two animal pieces. That's the Abrahamic covenant. Then he dies between the 2 thieves. That's the 2 houses. And he dies between the 2 evenings. Okay? Have you ever wondered why the Abrahamic covenant conducted between 2 animal pieces? Well, Have you ever asked yourself why our Messiah was crucified between two thieves? Have you ever wondered why the commandment in Exodus 12:6 is to kill the Passover lamb between the two evenings? Are you beginning to notice a pattern here? Each of the animals used to officiate the Abrahamic covenant represents a different group of people who would be called the seed of Abraham. Who are these three groups? They are the two houses of Israel, Ephraim and Yehudah, as well as the Gentiles who are grafted into the covenant through the blood of Mashiach. You will notice that Yahuwah told Abraham to divide the sacrifices in the midst. And what does Daniel 9:27 tell us that Messiah would do? It says he would cause the sacrifices to cease in the midst of the week. Do you see? With the Abrahamic covenant, the sacrifices were divided in the middle. He caused the sacrifices to cease when? In the middle of the week. It was the middle of the week, literally, because it was on a Wednesday, the fourth day of the week. It was in the middle of the literal week, but it was also in the middle of Daniel's 70th week. It was in the middle of the 7 years. Okay? In Bereshit, Genesis 15:17, it says, "And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and as it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces." You see, the reason why Abraham was instructed to divide the pieces in the midst is because the kingdom of Israel had been divided and the covenant had been breached by both houses of Israel. And Yahuwah knew this. He knew that they were going to cause a breach, that they were going to cause a gap in the covenant. A few chapters later, we see Yahuwah giving Abraham the details of this covenant by telling him that his descendants would be more numerous than the stars of the heaven and the sand on the seashore. In other words, Abraham would have earthly descendants represented by the sand on the seashore, okay, physical descendants, and he would also have spiritual descendants, those that are born from above, right, born again, from the Gentile nations who would be grafted into the family through Messiah's blood. Okay, Bereshit, Genesis 22:17 says that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And this brings us to understand who the many are that Messiah came to confirm and strengthen his covenant with. You see, the next word in Daniel 9:27 is the word many. And that word many is number 7227, Rab. And it means abundant in quantity, size, age, number, rank, quality. It means captain, elder, exceedingly full, to increase. It means to multiply. It means the multitude, plenteous, populous. So this word comes from this other root word, rabab. Rabab means to cast together, to increase, especially in number, to multiply by the myriad, multiply 10,000s. And you'll notice also that these two words for many are in the same family as the name for Rebecca. Okay, Rebecca. She was given a very special prophecy. In Genesis 24:60, just as she's about to leave to go get married to Yitzhak or Isaac, her family pronounces a blessing on her and says, "May you be the mother of thousands of millions." That's Genesis 24:60. Rebecca is the mother of thousands of millions. Her name, Rub, has the same root as Rab, Rebecca. Okay? In Revelation 7:9, the multitude of nations are gathered together under the throne, and this is what is said to them. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. So this is the great multitude, okay, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues. So we get a hint of who these many are in Daniel 9:27 by looking at the name Rebecca. Okay, number 7259, Ribka. Okay, it means to clog by tying up the fetlock, fettering, ensnare, to ensnare. What does that mean? Okay, well, I did some research on tying up the fetlock. It has to do with a horse. You know, it's really kind of complicated, but it has to do with the ensnaring. Okay, in other words, capturing, to ensnare. Do you remember in Luke 5:4-6 when the disciples caught so many fish in their nets that the net broke? The net was broken. In Jeremiah 16:16, there's a prophecy about how Yahuwah would send fishers to fish these lost sheep out of the house of Israel from the four corners of the earth and to gather them back to what? The shepherd in these last days. When our Messiah commissioned his disciples to become fishers of men in Mark 1:17, this was not a New Testament concept. Yahushua was fulfilling the prophecy of Jeremiah 16:16. And when his disciples had been fishing all night long without catching anything, they were suddenly able to catch a great multitude of fish at his command. In Luke 5:6, it says, and when they had had this done, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes. Okay, this word enclosed is the Greek word. This is a difficult word to pronounce. Sukleo. It means to shut together, to include, to embrace in a common subject, to enclose, to shut up. In Genesis 48:19, Jacob prophesied over his grandson Ephraim that he would become a multitude of nations. This phrase in Hebrew is Melo Hagoyim, which literally means fullness of the Gentiles, and it is also used in Romans 11:25 by the Apostle Shaul to describe the wild branches being joined to the natural branches of the olive tree in these last days. In Yehukanan, or John 21:10, Yahushua said unto them, bring of the fish which you have now caught. See, the word caught in Greek is number 4084, piazzo, which means to seize, to arrest, to capture, to ensnare. Have you made the connection yet? The many whom our Messiah confirmed the covenant with are the same many that Rebecca would become the mother of, and her name literally means to ensnare. Okay? In Yehukanan, or John 21:11, the disciples caught 153 fish when Yahushua commanded them to let down their nets. Now, this is a commentary I found that tells the meaning of the 153 fish. The Bible tells us explicitly that there were 153 fish in the net. That may have had a very special significance for the apostles. Firstly, in that time, there were only 153 known species of fish. Yahushua had already called the disciples fishers of men, but they focused initially and exclusively on Israel. The number 153 represented every possible known people group in the world at that time. In other words, the whole world. So in other words, at that time, there were 153 known nations at that time. Okay? And that comes from this website, which I'm not going to go there right now. Now we can connect the dots. The word many in Daniel 9:27 is the Hebrew word rab, which is the same root word that is used in Rebecca's name, who is the mother of thousands of millions. So this isn't some anti-Messiah who confirms a false covenant with many. No, this is the real Messiah who confirms the one and only covenant that he made with Abraham with many. his people. Okay? You see, it was Rebekah's beauty that captured the heart of Yitzhak, is Isaac, as she symbolizes the bride of Messiah, whose beauty ensnares or captures the lost sheep or the fish from out of the nations. All right, so let's get a recap here. Let's recap Daniel 9:27. In Daniel 9:27, it says, "And he shall confirm, strengthen, prevail, gabar, the covenant with many, the multitude," okay, the millions of thousands of Rebekah, her descendants, right, by Isaac, for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, that means in the middle of the last week, the middle of the 7 years, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Okay. Now remember, our Messiah spoke a word over Jerusalem, and he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who stone all the prophets that are sent unto you." He says, "How many times would I have wanted to gather you as a mother hen gathers her chickens, but you would not come to me." He says, "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." So it was his spoken word that pronounced desolation. Now, he uses the anti-Messiah to make them desolate, but it was Yehushua's spoken word that initiated the desolation. So in the middle of that week, that last week of Daniel, 70th week, in the middle of that 3.5 years, Yahushua died and did what? Caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Now, they still continued to perform sacrifices and oblations for 40 more years, right up until the Roman siege. But he caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And that word cease means to not be recognized. The Father no longer recognized their sacrifice and oblation because why? They rejected Yahushua as the red heifer who was able to cleanse the altar. And because they rejected his cleansing of their altar, every sacrifice they did moving forward was unacceptable. The Father couldn't recognize it because they rejected his cleansing of their altar. Okay. And so it was 40 years later, the Romans came in and destroyed Jerusalem. But leading up to that, for the next 40 years, every sacrifice and oblation, I mean, even in the Jewish Talmud, there's an account that's told where every year on Yom Kippur, when they tried to do the Yom Kippur sacrifice, the red ribbon failed to turn white. It was supposed to go from red to white. It failed to turn white. The temple doors would swing open by themselves. The fire kept going out on the altar. All these anomalies kept on happening, and they knew. I mean, the rabbis wrote in the Talmud, we know that the temple will be destroyed. They knew that there was something ominous happening. They knew they were coming under judgment, but they never put together 2 and 2. They never figured out why. Can you believe how blind they could be that they never even thought, oh, it's because we killed our own Messiah that this is happening? It never even occurred to them. I mean, it's beyond, it's so unbelievable that they never put that together. Okay. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So in other words, you see, they were doing abominations then in his time. And the abominations are even getting greater now that the snake bites have been distributed all over that nation. And because of it, he will make it desolate, even until when? The consummation. And that word consummation can mean, a bride and groom consummate on the wedding night. Okay, the marriage supper of the Lamb maybe, but it can also mean the completion of something, right up until the end. In other words, they were being made desolate then, leading up to the Roman siege, but history's going to be repeated. They're going to be made desolate again. Okay? but there will be a remnant. There will be a remnant. So in the midst of Passover week, which is the fourth day of the week, what we today would call Wednesday, Yahushua was crucified, and also in the middle of Daniel's 70th week, the last 7 years of this 490-year prophecy. Messiah caused the daily sacrifices and oblations to cease, to be recognized by the Father in heaven. Not only that, but he also caused the annual Yom Kippur sacrifices to no longer be necessary. Okay? That doesn't mean that they won't be continued in the new millennium. Yahushua is going to continue to offer sacrifice and oblation, not for sin, but as a memorial, as a teaching tool, so that we can get a glimpse into all the different sacrifices that he fulfilled in his once and for all sacrifice that was already finished from the foundations of the world. See, scripture tells us, and I explained this last week, that he was that lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It even tells us that the works were already finished from the foundation of the world, but that he appeared to us in this time for our benefit, so that we could see with our own eyes what he has accomplished for us. So him performing sacrifice and oblation in the new millennium is not going to be for sin. He's already the ultimate sacrifice from the foundations of the world. He's only going to be doing them as a teaching tool so that we can have a deeper understanding of Scripture and why these animal sacrifices were performed and what they mean. And also so the priests can have something to eat. We're going to be enjoying beef barbecue, lamb barbecue with our Messiah in the new millennium. If we belong to him, if we're part of his Melchizedek priesthood, if we are his kings and priests serving with him, yes, we're going to be eating beef and lamb barbecue with him. Okay? The evening and morning oblations failed to be acceptable, and the yearly sacrifices failed to be acceptable on Yom Kippur each year for 40 consecutive years following his crucifixion. For 40 consecutive years from the time that Messiah was crucified in the year 30, the Common Era, right up until the 70, the Common Era. This is when the Romans came and destroyed Jerusalem and the Jewish temple. The annual sacrifices on Yom Kippur were not acceptable. The Father could not accept them because the only thing that could cleanse their altar was the red heifer. Okay? And they rejected him as the red heifer as well. And because they rejected him as the red heifer, there was nothing left. There's nothing to sanctify the altar. See, it's the sacrifice that sanctifies the altar. Until then, General Titus came in with his armies. They made the Jewish temple desolate. They made Jerusalem desolate. You see, it was our Messiah who made Jerusalem desolate by his spoken word. However, he used the Romans to bring it to pass. But why did he make Jerusalem desolate? Yahushua is the one who prophesied over Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, when he said, "Behold, your house is left to you desolate." Thus it was his prophetic word which was decreed over Jerusalem that brought them to desolation. Let's look at the reason why they were now going to become desolate. In Matthew 23:37 through 38, I already quoted this. He said to them he says, "O Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, you that kill the prophets and stone them which are sent unto you, how often would I have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." The reason why he decreed that they were going to be made desolate was because they had killed every prophet which had been sent to them, and now they were about to kill their own Messiah. Yahushua even explained this in the parable of the husbandman and the vineyard from Matthew 21:33 through 43, where he likened the inhabitants of Jerusalem to husbandmen or keepers of the vineyard. He wanted them to be keepers of the vineyard. Okay? And, I have a illustration here of someone lying in wait to kill the heir. He's lying in wait to kill the heir. Okay. In this parable, the owner of the vineyard is the Heavenly Father, and he had sent his servants, the prophets, to harvest his grapes. But these wicked husbandmen who worked for the vineyard owner beat, killed, and stoned his servant to death. Okay. But when the owner sent his own son, they killed him also, thinking that they would be able to seize upon his inheritance and keep it for themselves. The judgment that ensued was that these wicked husbandmen would have the kingdom taken away from them, and it would be given to a nation that would bear fruit, thus bringing in the end time harvest to the Father in heaven. In other words, the Gentiles were going to take hold of the gospel, and they were going to become more fruitful. It was exactly 40 years from Yahushua's sacrificial death on the cross, until the Romans came with a flood and destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Daniel 9:26. And it is Yahushua himself who allowed this desolation to continue right up until the consummation. And what happens on a wedding night? The married couple consummates their marriage covenant. The word consummation in Daniel 9:27 is defined as kala, completion, termination, full end, complete destruction, consumption, annihilation. Now, that doesn't sound like, a married couple consummating, but it just means completion. The final piece to complete a marriage covenant is the married couple consummating. That completes the covenant. If that part isn't done, the rest of the covenant is invalid. Okay? The dictionary defines this word as the act of consummating, the consummation of a contract by mutual signature, specifically the consummating of a marriage. Synonyms for the word consummation: close, closing, conclusion, finale, end game, finish, grand finale, home stretch, wind up, wrap up. You see, in Daniel 9:27, we see then that this desolation of Jerusalem continues right up until when? The marriage supper of the Lamb in Revelation 19:7. So it's not finished yet. Okay, it's not finished yet. Which will take place when he comes back. It'll happen on Yom Kippur. At the same time that the bridegroom is consummating with his bride is when these wicked husbandmen will be totally destroyed and brought to an end. You see, Jerusalem will continue to be desolate right up until the wedding night when Yahushua consummates the marriage with his covenant bride. There will be 2 weddings during what is called the 10 days of awe. These are 10 days between the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. You see, Yahushua has 2 flocks of sheep, right? He spoke to the flock of sheep when he was here, and he says, other sheep I have that are not of this fold. See, the first group of people who will be taken into the marriage on Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, they are the born-again believers in Messiah. They are typified in Leah. Leah was the firstborn daughter of Laban, and also she was the first to marry Jacob or Jacob. Leah was the only wife to be buried with her husband Jacob. Genesis 49:31. But Rachel was not buried with Jacob. What does that signify? Well, you see, Leah is a prophetic picture of those who are buried in baptism with their bridegroom. In other words, they're born again. Okay? In Romans 6:4 and also in Colossians 2:12, we are told that the bride of Messiah is buried with him in baptism. Hence, Leah is the first bride who will be caught up to meet him in the air at the last trump. This will be on the day of blowing. 1 Thessalonians 4:17, 1 Corinthians 15:51 through 53. Leah became the mother of 10 sons, the 10 sons of Jacob, after Rachel died. And this includes the sons of the handmaidens, Zilpah and Bilhah. Therefore, Leah represents the 10 northern tribes of Israel, known as Ephraim. Conversely, Rachel represents the bride who has not been born again yet by the blood of the Lamb, because Rachel was not buried with her husband Jacob. Hence, she represents the two southern tribes of the house of Judah. Even though Leah gave birth to Judah and Rachel was the grandmother of Ephraim, the families end up switching places in the end. You see, this is the reason why Jacob crossed his hands over in Genesis 48:14. There's a kingdom principle that is seen throughout the scriptures, and it is that the first becomes the last and the last becomes the first. Mark 10:31. Another variation of this principle is that the older shall serve the younger. Genesis 25:23, Romans 9:12. And yet another variation is the greatest becomes the least and the least becomes the greatest. That's in Luke 9:48 and Matthew 13:32. So hence Rachel's two sons, who were fewer in number than Leah's sons, they end up becoming greater in the last days when they join themselves together with the sons of Leah, and the two shall become one house again at Messiah's return. Okay. So we're going to stop here, and we're going to pick up next week and finish this teaching. But I'm going to go ahead and let you guys open up your microphones and ask questions. So let's see. Chaston, comments or questions?
I personally wouldn't say that I have any questions, but I certainly do have a lot of breakthroughs.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I really enjoy it. I really like how you take the numbers, and so that's really eye-opening for me.
What do you mean by the numbers? You mean like the meanings, the definitions of the word?
Yeah, well, how you match the numbers, 2 and 3, and how you match all those up with scripture, and line those up with just how those match together. I see a much more deeper meaning in the scriptures now, like just with that.
Hallelujah. That's great. Yeah. Anything that really, you said you had a breakthrough, anything that was really like groundbreaking for you, anything specific?
Well, just the two, like with the photo that you have right here.
Yeah. The graphic. Yeah.
That's just the breakthrough for me that I feel.
Here's the thing for me. I used to wonder, why is it that Jacob had 7 years for each bride? That would be a total of 14 years. Joseph served under Pharaoh 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. That was 14 years. But why wouldn't our Messiah follow the same pattern?
Yeah.
That bothered me for a long time. I was like, shouldn't he be following in the same pattern?
Yeah.
But then it was like, I asked the question, and as soon as I asked the question, he said, why was Solomon about to divide this baby in half with the sword? And when he said that, I was like, oh, I get it. Because, there was these two sister harlots, and both of them lived in the same house together. And they each had a male heir. And women in those days could not inherit their property unless they had a male heir. And so these two sister harlots are described in Ezekiel 23 as Jerusalem and Samaria. And Yahuwah calls them sister harlots, Aholah and Aholabah. And, they both played the harlot. They both went after, pagan deities of the nations, right? But he says that Judah was even more treacherous than her sister. But he didn't divorce them. Why? Because, you see, the kingdom of Judah is the family line that our Messiah had to come through. And that's why Jacob said the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. So if he divorced both houses, then there'd be nothing left. He had to salvage a remnant. And so the way Solomon figured out who the real mother was, because they were one woman accidentally, rolled over and smothered her baby boy to death in the middle of the night. And so what she did was she swapped out her dead baby with the other lady's living baby. And she tried to pass off the living child as her own. The other woman realized what she had done, and they both went to Solomon to try to have him settle this matter. So he says, bring me a sword. Well, we know what the sword represents. The sword of the Spirit. The word of Elohim is sharper than any two-edged sword, right? And so he wants, he's threatening to divide the baby in half so that the real mother would come forward. And she did. She said, no, don't kill the baby. Let the other woman have the baby. She was more willing to let the other woman have the baby than to see her child be killed. So that proved to him she was the true mother. And so in this story, you have the two sister harlots, you have the kingdom of Judah, you have the kingdom of Ephraim. And who was the one that killed their Messiah? It was the kingdom of Judah. They killed their Messiah.
Yeah.
They didn't realize they did it. They were totally oblivious. And so the kingdom of Ephraim, that she represents the child that had the living son. So, it was like Solomon's kingdom was divided after this incident because he was building heathen temples to all his heathen wives, and he was taxing the people heavily to support all these building projects that he had going on. And because of that, the kingdom was divided. 10 of the tribes left the house of David, and they went north and were ruled under King Jeroboam. And only 2 of the tribes, Benjamin and Judah, remained in the kingdom of Judah. And they were ruled by King Solomon's son, Rehoboam. And so the 2 houses have remained divided ever since because of Solomon's sin. And so now we understand why, when he performed that sacrifice with Abraham, he told him to divide the pieces in half, because he knew that in the future, the 2 houses, that the kingdom of Israel would be divided in half. And, Jacob, his sons were divided over Joseph's coat. They were so jealous about Joseph's dreams and his coat that it caused division in the whole house. But also because, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. And so the sons of Leah were jealous because he favored Joseph. Joseph was the son of his beloved bride, Rachel, that he loved the most. And so they could see that he was showing favoritism. So there was all this division going on. It's division in the house. And you see this pattern throughout, with the 2 houses being divided. And then the Gentiles did what? They divided his garment. Yeah. Because the gospel was going to go where? To the Gentiles. The Romans are dividing his garment. What does that that symbolize? The Gentiles were going to lay hold on their inheritance. So they were going to get to keep the baby.
Yeah. It brings much more depth to the scriptures.
Right.
And also much more understanding to what's happening now, and what Trump is doing as well. What he's trying to do, what he thinks he's doing.
Right, exactly. Yep. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. If you think of anything more, I'll come back to you. Comments or questions, Nick?
I joined a little bit late, so I didn't catch everything, but it's fascinating. I read a few of your articles this morning, and I saw the fig tree generation article, which was pretty interesting because there's so much talk about that right now. But yeah, I don't have anything specific in regards to this. I'm just trying to put all the pieces together.
Okay.
A lot of work. So I probably read maybe 20 of your articles, but you have so much published. I'm trying to put it all together.
I can't keep up. It's like every day, like there's so much work to do, and I'm like, oh, I got to write a blog about this because things come to me, revelation comes to me, and I'm like, I have to sometimes forgo like the laundry and the dishes and the things that I need to get done because I need to get this down on paper or I need to get it down in a blog before, I lose it. I'm like, I got to type this out before I forget. So it's really hard to keep up. It's so hard to keep. It's coming at me like Niagara Falls. It's like trying to catch Niagara Falls into a bucket.
I mean, the detail that you provide and the Old Testament references, I've never seen anyone in that depth before. Goes maybe there's folks out there, but I haven't come across them. So it's fascinating to see how you tie everything together.
I tell my wife often is that for us guys, we already know that women are, they multitask well, or they kind of have that circuitry in their brain where everything's connected. Mm-hmm. And I really see that here with Maria, is that she has a really good knowledge of the Old Testament and the writings, the prophets, and the New Testament. And so when she sees one thing that's new, all of a sudden it's like things her synapses just start firing, and she's all of a sudden going, oh, that affects this, and she just, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's like, that's why I think it's because I can pick out a false teaching a mile away, because as soon as I see people going after these false teachings, I'm like, no, but that interferes with this, and this. So that can't be true, because then what about, you know what I mean? Like, they don't take those things into account. Like,
yeah, that's why you were so good at debunking. It's not that, and Maria gets accused of being a know-it-all by people that she would say, hey, you're wrong about this, or what do you think about that? It's just that she's been studying for a long time, and she's got a great memory, and she's able to recall, like I said, so many things fire. As soon as someone begins to say something, she immediately realizes, oh, wow, that goes right along with, then she's in a positive sense, but also if it's scripturally not correct, but it's not obvious to many, she starts to see, oh, that conflicts with this.
Yeah, and it's because when I first became born again in 1981, I didn't go to church for a while because I had just come out of the Roman Catholic Church. I didn't know the difference between Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, all these denominations. I was like, I don't want to go to any denomination. I don't want to be influenced by human doctrine, because I was already, seriously, disgusted with the Roman Catholic Church. So I was like, yeah, I don't want to be indoctrinated. So I stayed home for months and just did nothing but pray and read the Bible. And I asked the Father, show me what you want me, you teach me, because I don't trust human doctrine. And I started with Genesis, and I read the whole Old Testament first before I started reading the New Testament. And, the Brit Hadashah is what it's called in Hebrew, the Brit Hadashah. I read the whole Tanakh, Law, Prophets, and Psalms, because I felt like it makes sense. You watch a movie. Who watches a movie at the end? Oh, let me go to the end. Let me fast forward to the end of the movie and try to understand what's going on. That's what most people in the Christian church do. They join the Christian church, and what do they tell them? Oh, go read the book of John. Now, don't get me wrong. The book of John's a wonderful book. But you're losing so much context if you only read the book of John. They tell you to avoid the book of Revelation. They don't want you reading the book of Revelation because, it's most of those pastors don't even understand the symbolism of the book of Revelation. And they don't want to answer all these questions because they don't have the answers themselves. So they say, stay away from the book of Revelation. And it's like Yahushua said he would give you a special blessing if you read the book of Revelation. It's exactly. Like, so I didn't listen to any of that advice. I started with Genesis, and I just read straight through. And to me, that's the best way to read the scriptures, because you get the whole Tanakh into you. And now when you finally get to the letters of Paul, now Paul's letters make so much more sense. Now you understand the context of what Paul meant when he talked about, you are not under the law. He doesn't mean you're not under obligation to obey the law. He just means you're not under the law of sin and death. You're not under the law of divorce. You know, the law of divorce that prevented Israel from coming back to Yahuwah. You're no longer under the law of sin and death. You know, it's once you understand the Torah and the prophets, Paul's letters become crystal clear. But yeah, so thank you, Nick. If you think of anything else, you know, I'll come back to you one more time. Wade's World. Brother, you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. I guess I wanted to ask you a little about, you know, you discussed a little bit about Trump and, you know, that kind of thing. But so, you know, I've always thought myself that Trump was being used as a tool by the Lord to make the prophecies come into line. So, you know, now, as far as the Abraham Accords and stuff, can you explain to me what you feel that his place is in all of this at the time that we are now in the world? What that was all about, and how you think the Lord is using him?
Okay, well, so I've written quite extensively about Trump on my blogs because it all started last year at the beginning of the scamdemic, right? Now, it was on this particular day. Here you get. I show him doing all the Freemason handshakes with, you know, Macron. This is Justin Trudeau, the Pope. You know, Ted Cruz. These are all the Freemason handshakes. But you know, I'm not going to digress too much. I want to get to the point. Okay, Yahuwah spoke to me. This was last year on March 21st, 2020. Now, I voted for him in 2016, right? I had stopped voting for anybody after 9/11 because Yahuwah showed me that both parties, Democrat and Republican, they were both from behind the scenes working for the same. They're working for the Vatican because in 1871, America became a corporation. That our Constitution was changed from the Constitution of the United States to the Constitution for the United States. And we were no longer a nation that was by the people and for the people. We were owned by Vatican City Bank. And so ever since 1871, that's why all the presidents go to the Vatican and they're wearing black. Their wives look like the bride of Satan. They got the black veil on their face. And the Pope's wearing all white because the Pope thinks that he's, you know, the office of the papacy. They think they're the substitute for Jesus Christ on earth. That's what they say. So you don't get to have an audience with the Pope at all. You don't get a face-to-face audience with the Pope unless you agree to this. So when these presidents go to the Vatican dressed in black, they're agreeing to the idea that the Pope is the visible image of Jesus Christ on earth. And they have to bow to him and they have to kiss the skull and bones ring on his finger. Now, and I know this because I've read a lot of books about this. So the thing is, I stopped voting for either side because Yahuwah showed me, no matter who you vote for, you're still voting for the beast system.
Right. A bird with two different wings.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2016, I really didn't want to vote, but my husband kind of coerced me into it. Right, honey? He's repented since then.
Yeah. I was the whole lesser of two evils, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. He had me convinced of that for a while. And I was like, okay. So on March 21st, 2020, my perspective about President Trump profoundly began to change as I realized that the bleep bleep, I can't say the word or I'll get dinged by YouTube, that the bleep bleep virus was planned. It was a planned event to bring the world to its knees for the soon coming anti-Messiah. It was on that morning that Yahuwah spoke to me to look up the meaning of the words corona and virus in Latin, the language of the beast. He also told me to look up Revelation 6:2 in connection with these two words. What I discovered shook me to the core. I realized that we had now arrived at that moment in history where the anti-Messiah was about to appear on the global scene. For a more detailed explanation of the rider on the white horse from Revelation 6:2, please see my other blog. I've got another blog here about that. But basically, when I was reading this, and it said, and I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And, up until this point, I always believed that the rider on the white horse was the papacy. And I still do believe that. But you see, they don't do these things up front. They use a front man to do the dirty work for them. Like, Pope Pius signed the Reichskonkordat Act with Hitler in 1933, and he used Hitler to be the front man to annihilate those Jews in Nazi Germany. But behind the scenes, it was Pope Pius that initiated the whole thing. So when I go and read this, I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow and a crown. Well, the crown, the word corona means crown, but also the word bow, I was surprised to find out it's this Greek word toxon. And I looked up the etymology of this word. The Greek word toxon means bow or arrow. From this came the Greek word toxikon, meaning a poison in which arrows are dipped. Toxikon was borrowed into Latin as toxicum, which gave rise to the Latin verb intoxicare, which means to poison. The English word intoxicate comes from this Latin verb. Okay, so here I saw this syringe, and it looks just like a bow. You see that? And so all of a sudden I recognized that the rider on the white horse, Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, told me the rider on the white horse was Trump. And I was like stunned. Is the beast and his mark already here? Okay, so it was that day that I realized the rider on the white horse was Trump. And I was stunned. And so what happened was I started looking, I started researching, and I remembered that when Trump went to the Vatican on May 24th, 2017, he sat across face to face. And see, there's a guy by the name of Eric John Phelps who wrote the book, The Vatican Assassins. There's another guy named Alberto Rivera who wrote his story called the Alberto Story. He used to be a Jesuit, and he became born again, and he went to Chick Publications and told his story. Well, he said, Alberto, when he used to be a Jesuit, he learned this when he was briefed at the Vatican. Absolutely nobody gets a private audience with a pope unless they already agree by a written contract that the pope is the substitute for Christ on earth. Okay, so that means that every president that goes to the Vatican has already bowed the knee to the beast. Okay, so on May 27, 2017, Pope Francis presented President Trump with a copy of his encyclical on climate change. Climate change is another name for depopulation agenda, okay, to reduce the world's population down 95% to only 5% of the current population by 2030. It's called Agenda 2021. It's also called Agenda 2030. Okay, so this is code for Operation Warp Speed. It's no different than what happened here on July 21st, 1933. Pope Pius the 7th met, X represents 10, so it's the 12th, sorry. Pope Pius XII met with Adolf Hitler to sign the Reichskonkordat Act, which would give Hitler free rein to annihilate Jews in Germany, thus giving rise to a Jewish state for the end-time papal beast to rule in Jerusalem. Hitler annihilated 6 million Jews in Nazi prison camps between 1941 and 1945. Okay, so, and right here, he tweeted the next day, honor of a lifetime to meet His Holiness Pope Francis. I leave the Vatican more determined than ever to pursue peace in our world. Okay. Now, what I didn't know back then that I knew now is that this was in a parade that was done in Augusta, Georgia, before President Trump even was selected, because they're not elected, they're selected, right? Before he became the president, this was a float in the parade. It was him riding a white horse. Okay. And I
remember that. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, if that's not prophetic, I don't know what is, And so, and I don't know if you got to see my my blog about whether or not this is the mark. Yes, I absolutely believe that this snake bite is the mark. Okay.
Yeah, and I do too.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also heard different and done a lot of research also myself, and seen that there was a compilation of him going out and bringing the Pope's evil out to the world that you don't see on mainstream media or even hear about.
That's just because they're in competition with each other. One tyrant doesn't want to share the glory with another tyrant. So what he's going to do is he's going to give the illusion to the Christians and the conservatives that, oh, I'm taking down the cabal, but it's not because he's righteous. It's because he doesn't want to share his glory with anybody else. So it's not that he's like the good guy. It's just like he's going to give the illusion that he's taken down the cabal, which he probably is, because what's really going on here is that there's the Zionists and they want to rule over Jerusalem. And then there's the Vatican and they want to rule over Jerusalem. So there's really this inner conflict, two tyrants, in the boxing ring with each other. But both tyrants are bad.
Yeah. So
okay.
How do you see the Lord using him in this time?
Well, you're going to be surprised, but I really is starting to think that Trump is the little horn in Daniel's prophecy. Okay. So,
you think?
Yes, I'm going to show this to you. You're going to be shocked. Okay.
She's not saying she's sure, or thus saith the Lord. We just have to get that out there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So you see, there was, he allowed this golden image of himself to be made for the CPAC, event. If he was really a righteous man, he would have never allowed them to make a golden image of himself, right? And this is kind of, reminiscent of Nebuchadnezzar's golden image, which, we know what happened there, right? But check this out. This is something Yahuwah showed me last year. Here you have the first abomination of desolation in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes. It was in 167 BC. The troops of the Greek Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth desolated the temple, did away with the daily sacrifices on Kislev 25, which is December 25th. He set up an image of Jupiter or Zeus on the altar, resembling himself, and then he offered up a pig, unclean animal, on the altar. And there's a coin with his image on it. You see, it says in Revelation 13:14 that they should make an image to the beast. So there's a pattern. Now you have another pattern right here. In 70 AD, Nero Caesar's coin that bore his image, and the troops of General Titus desolated the temple again, did away with the daily sacrifice on the 9th of Av. Then they set up the Roman eagle standards as well as the graven image of Nero Caesar, who claimed that he was a reincarnation of Zeus that was born on December 25th. Nero Caesar adds up to 666 in Hebrew. Epiphania adds up to 66 in Greek. You see, Antiochus gave himself the name Epiphania, which is a Greek name that means God with us, or it means God manifest. It adds up to 666. Now you have the abomination right here. DNA from pigs, DNA from dogs, DNA from monkeys, human embryonic aborted baby lung cultures, all of that. It's all in there. Okay. So here we have the temple coin with the image of the beast on it. The person that's going to build the temple, his name adds up to 666, and I'll show it to you in a minute. Okay.
You mean in gematria?
Yes. Yep. I'll show it to you. So there's a website I like to go to. See if I can find it. Pull up another browser. It's called Antichrist Calculator.
Right. I think you've shown me all that. Yeah.
.com, right? Okay. Now, the reason I use this one is because they have different methods for gematria. There's like Greek, there's Roman, there's English. Okay.
So you believe in gematria, or do you think that gematria is basically satanic?
No, it's not satanic. It's all it is the word gematria just means geometry.
Right.
That's what it means in Greek. The Greek word gematria is the Greek word for geometry. We use geometry every day. Sure. When you make a recipe, when you build a house, when you're measuring something, you're using gematria, right? And he tells us to count the number of the beast, right? So he says, let he that has wisdom count the number of the beast. So it's not, of course, I mean, I'm sure people can use it in a satanic way, like to do, their own personal forecast or fortune telling,
I thought the cabal has been using gematria for a long time.
Well, they can use it for satanic reasons, like, trying to forecast something, like they're trying to tell the future or do divination.
Right.
But scripture tells us to count the number of the beast. Right. So, and I've got a blog about that. I have a blog called Is Gematria Witchcraft? And I prove, that it's not, because, I mean, he tells us to count the number of the beast. I mean, it depends on how it's used. There's people that will try to forecast their own future using numbers and numerology and all this. Yeah, if you're going to use it in that way, sure, it's evil. But if all we're doing is counting the number of the beast, which he commands us to do, no, of course not. It's all in how you use it,
Right.
And so here you have, okay, so it says right here, the little horn honors Apollo in his estate. Okay, Daniel 11:38. And also in Revelation 9:11. President Trump honors Apollo, which is called Abaddon, in his Trump Tower estate with gold and silver and precious things. Okay, Abaddon can be spelled Abaddon. Okay, now look at this. This comes from a Freemason textbook. They've got the mural of Apollo on the ceiling. Okay, the Freemason temple with Apollo in the ceiling. Here's the Trump Tower estate. He's got a mural of Apollo on the ceiling. And he honors Apollo with silver and gold and precious things, right? Right here. The little horn speaks great things and blasphemies against the Most High. Daniel 7:28, Revelation 13:5. In August of 2021, 2019 is what I meant to write. I got to fix that. 2019. Trump bragged on Twitter that the Jews in Israel are calling him the second coming of God and the Messiah, the King of Israel.
Yeah,
this is what he said.
Yeah, I remember.
He says, "Thank you, Wayne Allen Root, for the very nice words. President Trump is the greatest president for Jews and for Israel in the history of the world, not just America. He's the best president for Israel in the history of the world, and the Jewish people in Israel love him. He's the king. He's like the King of Israel. They love him like he's the second coming of God." Okay, now I used to justify him by saying, well, he didn't say that about himself. He's just quoting somebody else. But look, remember when the people in the book of Acts were calling Paul and Barnabas gods? The gods have come down to us. What did they do? Did they go around bragging about it, or did they tear their clothes? They tore their clothes and they said, no, we're not gods. We're men of like passions as you are. Like, they rebuked the people like, no, don't call us gods. Don't put us on a pedestal. Did Trump do that? No, he's bragging. He's speaking great things and blasphemies, right?
Yeah.
Right here. He says, I am the chosen one. Now, of course, at the time, I justified what he said because I was like, oh, he's talking about he's the chosen one to deal with China, and I wrote it off to, tongue in cheek, right? But later on, when I started putting everything together, I was like, oh my goodness, he's telling us in plain sight who he is. The little horn is worshipped in the form of a graven image. Why do you think they put his face on the image of the coin? Okay, because they asked him to build the temple. Okay, have you seen the Super Trump song? Have you seen it? Can you let them hear this? Honey?
Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh, you are going to be shocked. It's unbelievable. I'm just like, wow. These people are worshiping this man. I mean, he is being worshiped from all over the world. You would be shocked when you see how many people worship this man. The lyrics to the song, they're singing hallelujah to Trump. They're singing hallelujah because he made Jerusalem the capital city. It also says the little horn destroys many by peace. Well, August 13th, 2020, he signed a historic peace treaty with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, the Abraham Accords, and it stipulates that every citizen must cooperate with the snake bites. Okay? Destroying many by peace with a peace treaty. Okay? And also in Daniel 7:20, it says that he's more stout than his fellows. Looking at that Hebrew word for stout, it's rab, and it literally means huge, great, domineering. I've not met any other politician that uses the words huge and great more than this man. And this is what he tweeted. Huge breakthrough today. Historic peace agreement between our two great friends, Israel and the United Arab Emirates. I mean, it's like when you start to look at the characteristics of the little horn in Daniel, it's describing him to the T. To the T. Okay. Jerusalem Post, the King Messiah Trump. This was in August of 2019. The King Messiah Trump? Like, are you?
I remember that article. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My husband's going to play this song. You're just going to be floored when you hear this. They're singing hallelujah to him. They're saying when Hamas tries to attack us, Trump protects us. He's the prince. Right. They're calling him the prince. I mean, this is like
Israel's prince.
Yeah, it's blasphemy against the Most High. And he's reveling in it. He just enjoys it. And then in October 2020, he tweeted this. Okay. Can you see the picture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Now, it got taken down really quick, but then his son, Don Jr., says, imagine this. Trump gets all better and donates his plasma to develop a corona treatment. And then all the liberals have to get, jabbed,
with Trump's blood, yeah.
Yeah. And then Tom Hanks, he starred in this movie called The Da Vinci Code. He was donating his plasma. Okay. Now, the thing you have to understand is that in the Da Vinci Code is about this royal bloodline of that, they call themselves royal blood. They have a royal bloodline. They claim that they're the descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. They claim that Yahushua married Mary Magdalene, and they believe that Mary Magdalene's womb is called the Holy Grail. When we hear Holy Grail, we think of the cup that he drank at the Last Supper. That's not what they call the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is the womb of Mary Magdalene. So they believe that, Trump's family are supposed to be what's called Merovingian Jews. The Merovingian dynasty. Got to have that right here. They believe they are directly related to Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And so because they are his blood relatives, they have the right to the throne in Jerusalem. Okay. Trump's family.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on this. Okay. And I believe that Trump is a Nephilim. I believe that his bloodline is contaminated with, fallen angel DNA. Okay. Right here, Genesis 6:4, it says there were Nephilim, giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of Elohim came in unto the daughters of Adam, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men. And that word mighty men is Gibor, giants, which were men of eternity. Now the King James says of old. But if you look at that word old, it's the word olam. Olam means of eternity. Okay, so these weren't, mortal humans. These were immortals. And, there's a movie coming out this month called The Eternals by Marvel comic books, The Eternals. You see what they're telling us? Men of renown. So I think what they're trying to do is have you heard about the Hydra vulgaris?
No.
Okay. Oh my goodness. That's another thing. I'll tell you that in a minute. Okay. The man of sin encourages all people everywhere to violate the Torah. Now, are you familiar with the Noahide laws? Do you know what that is?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the Noahide laws are basically in the Jewish Talmud. It says that if you are Jewish, like if you can prove you're Jewish by DNA, or if you convert to Judaism, then you're allowed to keep the Sabbath. You're allowed to keep the feasts. You're allowed to call upon the name of Yahuwah. But if you are just a Gentile, you're not allowed to call on the name of Yahuwah. You're not allowed to keep the Sabbath. You're not allowed to keep the feasts. And they claim that Noah was given 7 out of 10. He was told to give only 7 out of 10 commandments to the Gentiles. It doesn't say that anywhere in Scripture. This is pure fabrication.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. Yeah.
They teach that, only the Jews are allowed to keep the feast and the Sabbath. Only the Jews are allowed to say his name or pronounce his name.
Yeah, and I disagree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Noahide laws. Well, every U.S. president has signed the Noahide laws, affirmed the Noahide laws since Jimmy Carter. He was the first. Every president since Jimmy Carter has signed the Noahide laws. It was voted into the U.S. Congress in 1993 under George W. Bush or H.W. Bush Sr. President Trump did, affirm. He did affirm the Noahide laws. See if I can find that blog. Is that I've got a lot of blogs open right now. He did affirm the Noahide laws. Here's the other thing. There's a lot of predictive programming in this movie called Megamind.
Yeah, you showed that I think a few series back.
Yeah. So in the film Megamind from 2010, there's a scene where Megamind, who shapeshifts into Marlon Brando from the Godfather movie, tells Hell, "I'm your father," after he injects him with a DNA altering, snake bite.
Right.
And then what does it say here this past year in April? Trump's latest delusion, where it says in 2 Thessalonians, they shall be given over to strong delusion. Funny that they should use that word, right? He says, "I'm the father of the." You see, it's all been planned. It's all been planned. Okay. The little horn performs lying signs and wonders. What did he do when he rolled out the jabs? He said, a great Christmas miracle. He announced it on Twitter. Great Christmas miracle. He does lying signs and wonders, calling it a miracle. Why did they roll it out at the winter solstice? Because that's when they sacrifice babies to Moloch. And we know what's in those things, right?
We do.
You see, he called it a Christmas miracle. Okay. I don't want to say it. In March 11th, 2021, he actually said, "I hope that all who take the snake bite will remember me. Remember me." This sounds like what Messiah said the night he said, "Whoever drinks my blood and eats my flesh," right? What did he say? He says, "Do this in remembrance of me." You see how he's acting like the Mashiach? You see that?
Yeah, it's weird though, Maria. The snake bite, what they have out there now, that wasn't the same ingredients that they gave him in hospital when he got sick.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they kept changing the ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all them ingredients were changed up.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure.
Yeah, as soon as he stepped down, as soon as they had control of all that junk,
where it says, right here, the second beast of Revelation 13:11 makes fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. That's Revelation 13:13. Well, it was Trump who launched Space Force in 2019, which is satellite intelligence.
Right.
Fire coming down from heaven in the sight of men. Nukes. Cyber warfare. Okay. It's called directed energy weapons. You know, and there's all kinds of proof here. California firemen find signature of directed energy weapons. California fires and directed energy. Trump Space Force. Huh?
I thought DARPA created all that under the Obama administration.
Well, he's the one that launched Space Force, which is a little bit different.
Right.
It's a little bit different.
But if you think about how many years they've been working on these things, it's not rapidly that they just came up with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, I think a lot of them things that they're showing now is actually developed maybe 30, 40 years ago, and we're just now seeing it.
Sure.
Right. Maria and I were talking about that, you know, at least for me, it was kind of an epiphany, to use that term. For Maria, it wasn't so much. But
I prefer to say the word revelation.
It was a revelation. Yeah, there you go. Instead of using Antiochus. But yeah, the idea that, you know, these demons, these Nephilim, appear to people, and there's occultists and Satanists all over the world who are drawn in one way or another, and they reveal these ideas and these philosophies and these technologies, right? And so, you know, some scientists are into the occult, others are not, but they're all pushing this agenda, and it's technology building upon technology, and we think, oh, we've got these great inventions, look what mankind has done. I would suggest there's another alternative, that we are smart, Yahuwah made us, but also the technologies that we have are built one upon another because it's the plan of how to get to a point where Hasatan can have us create artificial hybrid beings, right? So, you know, Satan knows our genealogy well, and he knows our DNA well, and so who better than him to, over the millennia, influence mankind and push a narrative, and, you know, if only we could live forever, if, you know, this transhumanism. Hasatan has planted these seeds and given information. Sorry, yeah. Long-winded.
Did you take the word out of the other last week's?
I did.
Okay, did you re-upload it?
Yes.
You did? Okay. Yeah, so here's another one. It says in Revelation 13, and he does great wonders so that he makes fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. Okay. Well, the key operative word is in the sight of men. Okay. It's got to be something that's done in front of people. Well, that word for fire in the Greek is puro. It means to be ignited, to glow. Okay.
Right.
The Hebrew word for horn is in the title little horn, can also mean a ray of light. It's this word keren, a horn. It means a coronet, which is a trumpet. The little horn means little trumpet, right? A ray of light. Well, on election day, November 3rd, 2020, the internet was abuzz with stories about the rays of the sun shining down on Trump. Here's a picture of it. I don't know if you saw this, but it went viral. Did you see this? Rays of light shining down on him?
Yeah, I think, I looked at that and I thought, well, you know, you see that with just the different formations of the clouds and stuff, that it can cause that. So, you know, I took it with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. But, you know,
and you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
But like people think that Barack Obama is the little horn, right? Because the word Barak in Hebrew means lightning. And it's spelled with a Q, right? There's another word that's pronounced the same, Barak, in Hebrew that ends with a kaf, the Hebrew letter kaf, which is equivalent to the K in our English language. But the one with the Q is equivalent to the kuf, right? Well, the one that's spelled with a K means blessed. I'm not saying that Barack Obama is blessed, because he's not. He's evil. He's wicked. But they use this, you know, as far as like they say, you know, the word Bama means like to fall from the height, to fall from a high place, right? So they say Barack Bama, you know, lightning falling, right? But I don't know. That's the only thing that they can pin on him. Really, everything else, as far as the little horn goes, it's totally it trumps the matches all the characteristics of the little horn. Also, it says he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Well, see if I can find this. I got to open up another. Let's see, Trump globalist. Last summer in June of 2020, he and Melania went and they dedicated this image of Pope John Paul. Here's him in the Oval Office signing the Noahide laws with all these, Zionists. There's him, Melania dressed like the bride of Satan, his daughter dressed like the bride of Satan. They're all, dressed in black, and this is, Alberto Rivera. This is a little snippet from the comic book series on the Alberto story. He says, you understand when a person is granted such an audience, he or she must bow down and acknowledge the Pope as Jesus Christ on earth. And for this, he holds their hands in a special blessing for a job well done. Okay. So, these are the books I've read: Vatican Assassins, The Godfathers, 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chiniquy, Double Cross, The Secret History of the Jesuits. I've studied this for 40 years. So I know what to look for. I know exactly what to look for. June 2nd, 2020, he signed into the law an executive order called Advancing International Religious Freedom. Now, on its face, it sounds really good. Like we all get to enjoy the same religious freedoms. However, that is not what this executive order is about. The executive order is basically saying that if you believe that our Messiah, Yahushua, is the only way to the Father, this public law is against you. Okay? It means that we will be punished for preaching that Yahushua is the only way, the truth, and the life. However, if you dare to speak out against the one world religion that Pope Francis is currently building right now, if you dare to say that there's only one way to the Father, you are an enemy. But you have to acknowledge that there are many paths to Elohim, the ecumenical movement. Now, so that's what the Advancing International Religious Freedoms is about. On its face, it sounds like, oh, that's nice. He's giving everybody equality. No, it's basically saying you can't speak out against the one world religion. But if you're somebody that's narrow-minded and you believe there's only one way to the Father, you're an enemy of the one world religion. Okay? And I've put all the links in here. He's right in line with the beast system. He is right in line with the beast system. And the day after this, after he signed that interreligious, whatever you call that, I'll show you the picture of him and Melania. There it is. Dedicating this giant colossal statue of Pope John Paul II. And the reason for that is, Pope John Paul II was Jewish. His mother's name was Emily Katz. And Pope John Paul is supposedly from the Merovingian bloodline, just like Trump. They're supposedly from the same royal bloodline, right? So there's something weird going on there, right? And Trump actually converted to Judaism in 2017. People don't know this. He converted to Judaism. Okay, so there's a lot I can go into, but I am convinced that he is. Now, the word for deadly wound here, he suffered a deadly wound by a sword. It says in Revelation 13:14, the word sword is makira, which can also mean judicial punishment. In other words, impeachment. The dictionary defines the word impeachment as judicial punishment. Okay? And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered. That word wondered means to admire. I looked it up. It means to admire. Well, and then right after that, they say, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? In other words, who is able to impeach him? Okay? Because that word impeach means judicial punishment. So, and the sword, the word there for sword means judicial punishment. Now, on March 13th, 2021, Trump announced that his second attempt at impeachment failed. The results of the impeachment trial were available on March 12th, Friday, March the 12th. But why did he wait to announce this on a Saturday, which is not a business day? Well, it's because the number 13 is often used in Freemasonry to make their black magic rituals more powerful. Okay? So on the winter solstice, December 21st, 2020, the Gallup poll announced the most admired man in America, well, actually in the whole world, was Trump, President Trump. He was awarded the most admired. And like I said, that word admired, that word wondered, where it says, and all the world wondered, that word literally means admired. All the world admired the beast. I mean, it's like, once you look at these words, you're like, oh my gosh, he's the beast. Okay? Look at the words here. This word adds up to 666. This word adds up to 666. Noahide laws, 666. Gesara, 666. Hydroxychloroquine, 666. William Henry Gates, 666.
If you pick a subject matter unrelated and you just start taking, a ton of words and feeding them into this thing, which is just different, it's different ways of doing the algorithm behind the scenes. You don't find this many things in a single subject that are all 666. I mean, you might find a hit here and there, and that it's random, but it's just not a coincidence.
Yeah, watch this. Dr. Anthony Fauci, 666. Okay, watch this. William Henry Gates, 666. Okay, I mean, it's just, watch this.
Don't say it.
Yeah. See that? I mean, this is not a coincidence. Yeah, I mean, this is why Yahuwah gives us, look, Kissinger, 666. Alexander the Great, 666. This guy who's an author who wrote this book, he wrote this book called Draining the Swamp, which that's what Trump's using as his playbook. That author's name, Harvey Francis Bernard, adds up to 666. Noahide laws, 666. I mean, Pope John Paul's name in Latin, Ioannis Pavlos Secundo, 666. I mean, this is no accident. I mean, Hillary Diane Clinton, where is it? Hillary Diane Clinton, 666. George Mario, first and middle name of Pope Francis, 666. His last name, Bergoglio, 666. I mean, it's just, the list just goes on and on. It's just crazy. But, it's, there's just so much evidence here at this point. I believe he's going to come back in 2024, and I believe he's going to build that temple. And, I think that there's this inward conflict between him and Pope Francis, and Pope Francis is hoping he's the one that's going to sit in the temple and declare himself to be Elohim. But I think that Trump's going to overpower him, and he's going to be the one to go, no way, it's going to be me. I'm the one that gets to sit in the temple. And he could even be ordained as a pope because, there was that Charlemagne. You know about Charlemagne, right? You don't? Okay. You know who Charlemagne was?
Oh, boy.
No.
This is a big one. Big subject.
I'm going to keep it really short. Okay, so Charlemagne was a king in the year 800. He was not previously a Catholic priest or a cardinal or a bishop or anything like that. He was just a political guy. He was just a king.
Can you put Antichrist calculator in the chat, by the way?
Okay, hang on a minute. Let me go here first. Okay. So Charlemagne, 44 out of 45 presidents are related to King Edward. 34 of these are related to Charlemagne of France. Now, even though he was king of France, he was of Germanic descent. And that's important because Germania was the military arm of the Holy Roman Empire. So Charlemagne, he was ordained as a pope in the year 800. All of our U.S. presidents are related to Charlemagne. They have the same royal blood as Charlemagne. Okay. And the reason why is every president is an extension of the papacy. Okay. So he was German. Hitler was German. Trump is German. Why is that important? Because Germany is the military arm of the Holy Roman Empire. So you've got the religious arm, which is Vatican City, and you got the military arm, which is Germany. So the pattern that we see all the time is you've got the Pope, who is the leader of the religious, he represents the religious whore, the religious, harlot that brings all the religions together. But the military guy, he's the one that's the loud mouth. He's the front man. He does all the talking while the Pope looks, smelling like a rose, like he's behind the scenes looking like the quiet guy that doesn't say a whole lot. But he always uses a front man to do the dirty work for him. That's what the papacy does. They had Hitler as the big mouth, the loud mouth, the one speaking great and blasphemous things. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the Pope Pius was behind the whole thing too. But nobody puts those two together because they're not looking at the Pope. They're looking at the front man, the guy who's doing the dirty work. And it's the same thing again with Trump. He's the guy doing the dirty work for the papacy. He's the guy that is, he's like the front man,
Right.
So yeah, there's just so many. He's like another Nimrod. I mean, there's so many things that Trump is a lot like the first historical Antichrist, Nimrod. Nimrod was the builder of the Tower of Babel. Trump built the Trump Tower. Nimrod appears in Genesis chapter 10. He's described as a mighty hunter, right? You look at the word for Nimrod and it means rebellious or valiant. The dictionary defines the word valiant as boldly, courageous, brave, stout-hearted. Remember in the book of Daniel, the little horn is more stout than his fellows. Okay.
Right.
Trump started building this tower in Uruguay in 2017. Look how much it resembles the Tower of Babel. Look at that. Okay.
Right.
The prophet Isaiah calls Nimrod the Assyrian because one of the 12 provinces in the land of Shinar where he ruled was called Ashur. That's the ancient name, Ashur, but it's really where we get the word Assyria. Okay, so when he talks about the Assyrian, he's talking about Nimrod. The word Ashur means to be successful, to stand up straight and proud. That's Trump. Can you think of another political leader who's a builder of a tower? Can you think of another political leader today who knows how to play the game? Somebody who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, perhaps. Somebody who loves the challenge of a chase. Can you think of a political leader today who's a successful real estate mogul? Here's the other thing that's interesting is that the word hunter, I looked up the word for hunter because it says that Nimrod was a mighty hunter. It says here, the Hebrew word for hunter is sa'id, which means the game, the chase. Well, the word game comes from the Latin root gamble, as in gambling casino. Okay. a mighty hunter, a mighty game player, a mighty gambler. You see that? It's all connected, right? Marina Abramovich, you know who that is, the spirit cooking witch. You know who she is?
Yeah.
Okay. She was in an interview, asked about Trump. What did you think? What do you think of Trump? She said that Trump is playing the part of the fool in the tarot cards. And she said that first he's playing the fool, but then he's going to play the magician. So in his first term, he's the fool, right? Because as a fool, everybody mocks him, everybody ridicules him. He looks like a martyr, just like the Messiah. Oh, everybody feels so sorry for him. That poor man. Okay, that's how he gains sympathy. But when he comes back, he's going to come back as the magician. In other words, the one who comes back from a deadly wound. You know, whether it's a physical deadly wound, whether it's a deadly wound to his political career, I don't know. But she says he's playing the part of the magician. She says that she's giving her support for President Trump because he's the magician. He's being used to wake us up, you know, the awakening, the age of enlightenment. It's just so many people don't see it because he's done probably the best PR campaign of any president. He's got so many Christians and conservatives convinced that he's a good guy, but he's not. He's the reason why the citizens in Israel are dropping like flies right now. Because he's the father of the, you know what?
Right.
Yeah. In fact, don't you think this is weird? But look, he read this poem, right? And what does it say about the little horn? He understands dark sentences. It says, in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences. If you look up this word fierce, it means harsh, greedy, or rough. The word countenance means face. He has a harsh face. This simply implies that his demeanor is harsh, his facial expressions exude this. His dark sentences means that he speaks cryptically. The Hebrew word for dark sentences is kidah, which means riddle, puzzle, proverb. These are things that we were seeing on his Twitter feed every day, speaking in code. The QAnon people say, oh, he likes to speak in code. You know, he even admitted in his book, Art of the Deal, that he had a Kabbalah teacher since the 1980s. So he's heavily into Kabbalah. Then what did he do? He read this poem about this woman and the snake.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And he talks about a woman who takes this snake in. She feels sorry for him and she nurses him back to health. And then when she finally, you know, brings him back to health, what does he do? He bites her with a nasty bite. And she says, why did you do this?
And you were talking about this with some of your kids, that there's another component to look at for little Trump or little horn.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Because my son Jeremy was saying to me, you know, his son Don Jr. might run. And I said, well, that's a possibility. But, you know, what's funny is even if that's true, it still doesn't change anything because he would be the little Trump, the little horn.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, I've even heard a little bit about that. Kushner might be the one to be rose up to be the Antichrist.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Only thing, though, is I couldn't get his name down up to 666. I tried it every which way, and I couldn't get it to do that. I don't know. He could be. I know that's also a possibility. I actually read that Trump believes his son-in-law is the Messiah. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is the Messiah. But, you know, there's so many possibilities.
And you have to look at the Lubavitch movement, too. They don't believe in a Messiah the way we do. We think of the Messiah as, you know, Yahuwah come in the flesh. You know, he's the creator.
Heaven. He comes from heaven.
Right. He's the creator incarnate. Mm-hmm. Right. And they don't believe that. They have a different idea of Messiah. They think they're going to usher in this age through their own will. and the Messiah is someone who, it's almost like reincarnation. It's the new wise person of the age, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when I started looking at, Trump Little Horn, I just couldn't believe how much I saw, like even predictive programming in movies. Yeah, it's just there's just so much. It's ridiculous how much he fits the Little Horn.
Can you give me antichristcalculator.com? Can you put it in the chat?
Oh yeah.
I need to put it in the YouTube stream as well.
Yeah, that's the only site where they actually have 10 different methods. Because they've got English, Greek. They've got like every different method you can think of.
And the idea isn't that you just try every method per se. It's that if the person has some authority, like they're the U.S. president, then you'd try, in English, or if they're a pope, you would do it in Latin, or something like, you get
Right.
the idea. Wherever their seat of power comes from, their official title, you would try that, not just their regular name, their title name.
And, lots of people say, well, he's against abortion. Okay, he's not against abortion. And when you really listen to what he says he's in favor of abortion in the event of a rape or incest. And he's also in favor of abortion if the woman's life's in danger. So he takes the same position as Ronald Reagan did. So that's really not being anti-abortion. It's like double speak. It's like speaking with a forked tongue. Yeah, I'm against abortion, but in these cases, I'm not against abortion. Come on. I mean, it's just he gives the illusion like he's against abortion. But in this case, when it comes to the snake bites, he's not. Because then it's like, oh, it's life-saving, supposedly. This woman, Dr. Teresa Deisher, she says, human babies born alive at 5 to 6 months old so that their hearts can be obtained beating. And they have to be beating to be used in the bleep research that's being done. If the heart has stopped beating, it's not useful. You cannot use it. And so these babies are delivered alive and their hearts cut out without anesthesia.
That's not just her opinion. She's testifying under oath.
That's right.
Right.
And so he knows all this. And he's agreed to allow these things. He calls himself the father of it.
Right.
So, yeah, he's got everybody thinking he's anti, what, but he's really not.
Yeah.
It's really not.
So with the Antichrist calculator that I put in both YouTube and the Zoom chat for you to copy, I think Google might not work for you at all. But if you use other browsers, it still warns you that it could be unsafe, and you have to choose to proceed anyway. Mm-hmm. You click on advanced and then say proceed. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I don't use Google for anything. So.
Yeah, right.
I always use a different browser.
Right. Good call.
Yeah.
Any more questions and comments from anyone? The YouTube stream is active with conversation, but not specific questions.
Yeah. Anybody else want to ask a question before we sign off?
Chasten says, great study.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, nobody else has anything else. We're just going to end in prayer. Okay. Abba Yahuwah, we love you. We praise you. We worship you. We glorify your name. Your name is Kadosh. Your name is holy. Father, we thank you for the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach that cleanses us from all sin and all unrighteousness. We thank you that we can come boldly before your throne of grace to find mercy and help in time of need. We thank you for your provision. We thank you for your protection. We thank you for pouring out your Ruach HaKodesh upon us. Give us the spirit of wisdom and revelation, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and understanding, and of the fear of Yahuwah Elohim. Speak to us, Father, in these last days. Equip us to do the work you've called us to do. Equip us to be mighty warriors for you right up until the end. And protect us from deception. Protect us from all sickness and disease, that you might use us to reach as many people as possible for your kingdom. And Father, we pray for our loved ones and those that we know and love that are deceived. that you wake them up out of their deception. And those that have already taken the monster mash, Father, we pray that you, we know that there's probably nothing that can be done at this point. It's a done deal. They're already being altered. And, it's a sad thing. People ask me all the time, well, what about this and what about that? And it's like, I don't know the answers. All I can do is go by what is written in the scriptures. And, I just pray that we can be used to save as many people as possible from making this mistake, that we can get the word out to as many people as possible before it's too late. Thank you, Abba Father. I just ask you for all those who are listening and who attended today, that you would just heal us in our bodies of any ailments, any sickness, any disease, that you provide for us, that you answer the prayers of your people, Father, that you hear our prayers as incense that rises up, and through your nostrils you smell the sweet aroma of our prayers, and that you hear us and that you answer us speedily. Thank you, Abba, Yahuwah. In the name of our Messiah, Yahushua. Amen.
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 Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. And we should be back next week with, what, part 2?
Part 2, yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Shabbat
Thank
Shalom.
you, guys. Bye-bye.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.